I'm sure that anyone who knows me or knows me in a YouTube sense of the word can imagine what I thought about the first half of Smallville, the finale. One word: perfect or perfection. I honestly, I love romance and love, and I didn't believe that we would ever see anything like this on Smallville. I watch romantic movies and soap operas. As much as people want to rag on soap operas, they do romance well. They're on every day, and any couple that you like on a soap opera, you're gonna get like 100 moments that you can count of awesome, romantic moments because that's what they do. That's their genre. Better than primetime TV. But when I saw the vows, the door scene, and the walk down the aisle, I was floored. Like I was in shock that I never thought in my wildest dream that anything this amazing would happen on Smallville. A, because I felt like it's like watching a fan video or reading fan fiction, and that's a compliment. I mean, I honestly, it was like I couldn't have written something better myself, which all the time I watch Smallville and go, I would have changed this, or I would have changed that. No, none of it. It was beyond my wildest dreams for Clark and Lois, and such a perfectly done hour of television. It was like a romantic movie, especially the door scene. Like, I've never seen anything like that on Smallville. Not in, you know, 7 years that I've been watching. I've never seen anything that just simply real and honest and romantic. Never. So let's start at the top. Clark and Lois are talking in the elevator in her office. They're disagreeing on whether or not they should get married. Then Clark goes to the farm and his mom is there. He's talking to his mom about selling, and she's like, "No, you shouldn't sell." And I was like, "Thank you, Mrs. Kent." I mean, I've been saying that Clark shouldn't sell his dad's family's property. But what I loved about the scene is that Clark disagreed with her, and it was great. Like he had made up his mind. I didn't agree with what Clark was saying, and I was so proud in that moment that Clark was thinking for himself, that he wasn't being led around by someone else, and he had reasons for what he believed. And even though he disagreed with his mom, he did it respectfully, and he still believed what he thought was right. It's like, thank you, Clark. You have arrived. And then Mr. Kent was there and he had tears in his eyes, and I was like, oh, Mr. Kent is like me and like all the fans who don't want to see the farm being sold. And that was a really sad moment. Then Clark went to his father's grave. This is an amazing, amazing scene. I think the director's name is Kevin Fair. It was so beautifully shot because Clark is talking to his dad, but he doesn't see him. And his dad is there, and at one point he puts, Mr. Kent puts his hand over Clark's hand, and it was so just amazing and wonderful. And they kind of played with it because at that point he wasn't seeing his dad, and later in the barn he is seeing him. But I thought it was such a great message that when someone passes away that you love, they're a part of your life. They're a part of you. It doesn't matter if you go to their grave or if you're at your house. You can always talk to them. You can always be with them because they're always with you. And you don't really lose people if you love them, and they're always with you. And I thought that was a really good message. And this is my issue that I've had with Smallville. I always said it was too dark, and I didn't mean like too serious. I thought there was too much negativity on this show for a show about Superman. But in this first hour, it was so positive, so much like love and inspiration. And for me, that's why I love Superman. I mean, I have an older sister who's like, oh my god, you're obsessed with Superman. She's like, he's a fictional character. It does not matter. And I'm like, but no, Superman does matter to me. And what I mean by that is what Superman represents. I know it's a comic book, a cartoon, a TV show. What Superman means to me is it's about inspiration and hope And those things are real. Um, Ever since I was little, it was like this feeling that if you don't quite fit in, like I have four sisters, and my sisters are really girly, and I was more like a tomboy, and I just have one brother, but I wasn't a guy, so I couldn't quite fit in there. But Superman doesn't care, you know? If you're a man or a woman, if you're black or white, rich or poor, if you're Muslim or Jewish, he's here to save us all. And I don't mean that in a savior type Christian way. That's not what I'm saying. And he's not God, but Superman represents to me this ideal that in the eyes of God that we're all equal, and that to me is why I love Superman. So it goes beyond just a TV show. It's just my idea that we're all the same, and to have that be like this hopeful message. That's what I've always liked about the character. Um, anyway, so Oliver comes up, and he and Clark are talking about moving on and leaving people behind, and Clark thinks that maybe he needs to let go of his past with his dad and with Jarrell, and then he says maybe he needs to let go of Lois. I also love this scene because Oliver and Clark, they've had their issues, they've had their ups and downs, but they're friends, and Oliver's really trying to be there for him, but Clark has to do this on his own. Like, he has to make up his own mind. And that's what we've been waiting to see for 10 years, right? Clark making up his own mind. So Clark goes to his apartment. Wow. And the scene, once again, I felt like I was dreaming. Like, seriously. I could not believe how amazing this was. Talking to Lois, and he had come to the conclusion that they should call off their wedding. But after Lois read his vows, she had decided that she should go through with the wedding. The thing I loved about Clark's vows, not just that they were amazing, the words themselves, but that they were true. I mean, too often, in real life people do it, people lie about what they're feeling, but often in fiction people are so dramatic. Like, um, I know Jimmy's vows were like, this is the first moment I saw you, this kind of thing, and I was afraid they might do something like that with Clark and Lois. And not that I would personally mind because people exaggerate, but I know the fans would be like, oh my god, they didn't like each other when they first met, and just like it would be such an uproar about, oh, this and Lana and blah blah blah. Kind of like Clark said he loved Alicia, and then a couple of weeks later he was trying to have sex with Lana and said to her that he never loved anybody else, and I was like, ouch. That girl who just got murdered, did you forget about her? So what I loved about Clark's vows was that he said, that Lois has this grace, and something else he said about her. What I thought is, Lois does have this whole tough thing, but she's so different with Clark, and they've shown that since day one. Also, when he said that she had always believed in him, that is true. Like, watch season 4, and even when Clark and Lois are bickering or not getting along, when push comes to shove, if he asked her to do something, she always did it. If she asked him for something, he was always there. Like, no matter what. Like, Recruit, that's why I love that episode. Because it was one of my favorite scenes. She comes into the loft, and Clark goes, Lois, whoever thought I'd be happy to hear your voice? And then in Lucy, when she said, so we're friends now, he goes, I won't tell anybody if you don't. This is what I just love. Anyway, you should go back and watch those episodes from season 4. Because when I started watching in season 8, I would hear people saying, oh, Clark and Lois hated each other. And then when I watched the episodes myself, I was like, they were annoyed, but they never hated each other. And like, people have, I don't know if they built it up in their mind, but some people honestly say, oh, they had this love-hate relationship. I was like, no, it's more like a annoyance to love, but no, they never hated each other. And you could tell, especially in the episode Recruit, because there's a guy who's saying things about Lois, and Clark kind of looks up to the guy who's a football player in college, and he went to Smallville High, and he's like, oh, Clark, you should be careful who you're friends with. And Clark kind of acts like, yeah, like he doesn't want to be around Lois. But then after that, you just see like he's constantly still being her friend, and he honestly is more protective of Lois than he is about this guy who, you know, like if he really hated her, then he would have easily been like, yeah, you know, and went over to the football player's side and been more like that. But he was completely and totally still looking out for her, and that was all the way through, you know, seasons 4 through 7 that they were friends. Anyway, and then he said, "Whenever I've been lost, you brought me back," and I thought, that's another thing. When Clark was about to kill the guy who murdered Alicia, this is also in season 4, Lois was the person who stopped him from doing that. So there was never a time, I mean, as much as I've ragged on Smallville for their failures, they did not fail the Clark and Lois friendship, bond, any of that. Like, even as mad as I was about what they did with Lana in season 8, the romantic stuff I thought could have been better. But when it came to them being friends and them being totally bonded and supportive of each other, like, they never got that wrong, I don't believe. Um, so, and like in Pandora, you know, they showed in the future that it was Lois who brought him out of his whole funk. And, excuse me, when he found her, saved the train, and she came back in season 9, it was kind of like Lois was the one who brought him out of that. So, and Lois always believed in him. She listened to Clark when she didn't listen to anybody else from the get-go, basically. Um, when, oh, what was I thinking? Yeah, she even believed in Clark when she didn't know she was believing in Clark, you know, when she was talking to the blower on the phone. So, really, everything he said was so dead on for them and so amazingly sweet and romantic that I thought, wow, I have to, like, I wanted to, like, go give the writers of this episode, part 1, a hug. It's like, I want to hug the guys who wrote this, and the director, and Tom Welling, and Erica Durant. I just feel like it was so amazing. I felt, like, so moved by that. Another thing I must say, the scene when they're at the door. I know I've said a lot over the years, over the year, or whatever, about Tom Welling's acting or whatever, Clark being stiff and stoic or unnatural. Truly, this scene when he's standing by the door, I don't know what happened, but I felt like I was watching some kind of transformation, and I don't know if it was because the show was ending or the episode or anything, but I don't know if it was Clark or if it was Tom. I really don't know what happened, but, like, I can't even describe really the first part of this finale because I think people just would have to see it, the scenes that I'm talking about. But there was a point when she asked him, she's like, "What would your dad say?" And just his expressions and the way he's talking, it was like Clark had become this person, like you were seeing it literally in that moment that was so full of oh God, I'm trying to describe it. Like, he was so like comfortable with himself, and he was so confident and intelligent, and I'm not coming up with the words that I want, but there was something, he was so at ease, like so at ease. It was so like genuine, like really, that's the word. It was so genuine. He said his dad didn't really, probably wouldn't say anything, but he always knew what he was thinking, and he was like leaning on the door, and just I don't know what to say. Like, both of them in that scene, like the give and the take, and them talking on both sides of the door, I was like, this could be in any romantic movie, and it would just be one of those like ah moments. Oh, speaking of ah moments, I'm sorry, I'm gonna try not to cry. When Lois is standing at the altar, not the altar, at the door, at the aisle, when she walks up, and she looks and Clark is not there, and there's this look on her face like she thinks he stood her up, and it's just like this moment of like pure heartbreak and hurt for her, and then Clark takes her hand. I'm sorry, I am getting like really emotional talking about this, but just again, I have to say Kevin Fair did an amazing job, because when he grabbed her hand and that music started and they walked down the aisle, it was the most perfect thing. And I'm running out of time right now, so just let me know what you think. If you know people have any questions for me or want me to talk about old episodes, let me know. Bye.